Phakir Chand. There was a king's son, and there was a minister's son. They loved each other dearly. They sat together. They stood up together. They walked together. They ate together. They slept together. They got up together. In this way, they spent many years in each other's company, till they both felt a desire to see foreign lands. So one day they set out on their journey. Though very rich, the one being the son of a king and the other the son of his chief minister, they did not take any servants with them. They went by themselves on horseback. The horses were beautiful to look at. They were Pakshiraj's carrot or kings of birds. The king's son and the minister's son rode together many days. They passed through extensive plains covered with paddy, through cities, towns, and villages, through waterless, treeless deserts, through dense forests, which were the abode of the tiger and the bear. One evening they were overtaken by night in a region where human habitations were not seen, and as it was getting darker and darker, they dismounted beneath a lofty tree, tied their horses to its trunk, and, climbing up, sat on its branches covered with thick foliage. The tree grew near a large tank, the water of which was as clear as the eye of a crow. The king's son and the minister's son made themselves as comfortable as they could on the tree, being determined to spend on its branches the livelong night. They sometimes chatted together in whispers on account of the lonely terrors of the region. They sometimes sat demurely silent for some minutes, and anon they were falling into a doze, when their attention was arrested by a terrible sight. A sound like the rush of many waters was heard from the middle of the tank. A huge serpent was seen leaping up from under the water with its hood of enormous size. It lay floating many a rood, then it swam ashore and went about hissing. But what most of all attracted the attention of the king's son and the minister's son was a brilliant manikya, jewel, on the crested hood of the serpent. It shone like 1,000 diamonds. It lit up the tank, its embankments, and the objects round about. The serpent doffed the jewel from its crest and threw it on the ground, and then it went about hissing in search of food. The two friends sitting on the tree greatly admired the wonderful brilliant, shedding ineffable luster on everything around. They had never before seen anything like it. They had only heard of it as equaling the treasures of 7 kings. Their admiration, however, was soon changed into sorrow and fear, for the serpent came hissing to the foot of the tree on the branches of which they were seated, and swallowed up, one by one, the horses tied to the trunk. They feared that they themselves would be the next victims when, to their infinite relief, the gigantic cobra turned away from the tree and went about roaming to a great distance. The minister's son, seeing this, bethought himself of taking possession of the lustrous stone. He had heard that the only way to hide the brilliant light of the jewel was to cover it with cow dung or horse dung, a quantity of which latter article he perceived lying at the foot of the tree. He came down from the tree softly, picked up the horse dung, threw it upon the precious stone, and again climbed into the tree. The serpent, not perceiving the light of its head jewel, rushed with great fury to the spot where it had been left. Its hissings, groans, and convulsions were terrible. It went round and round the jewel covered with horse dung, and then breathed its last. Early next morning the king's son and the minister's son alighted from the tree and went to the spot where the crest jewel was. The mighty serpent lay there perfectly lifeless. The minister's son took up in his hand the jewel covered with horse dung, and both of them went to the tank to wash it. When all the horse dung had been washed off, the jewel shone as brilliantly as before. It lit up the entire bed of the tank and exposed to their view the innumerable fishes swimming about in the waters. But what was their astonishment when they saw, by the light of the jewel, in the bottom of the tank, the lofty walls of what seemed a magnificent palace. The venturesome son of the minister proposed to the prince that they should dive into the waters and get at the palace below. They both dived into the waters, the jewel being in the hand of the minister's son, and in a moment stood at the gate of the palace. The gate was open. They saw no being, human or superhuman. They went inside the gate and saw a beautiful garden laid out on the ample grounds round about the house which was in the center. The king's son and the minister's son had never seen such a profusion of flowers. The rose with its many varieties, the jessamine, the bell carrot, the malika carrot, the king of smells carrot, the lily of the valley, the champaka carrot, and 1,000 other sorts of sweet-scented flowers were there. And of each of these flowers there seemed to be a large number. Here were 100 rose bushes, their many acres covered with the delicious jessamine, while yonder were extensive plantations of all sorts of flowers. As all the plants were begemmed with flowers, and as the flowers were in full bloom, the air was loaded with rich perfume. It was a wilderness of sweets. Through this paradise of perfumery, they proceeded towards the house, which was surrounded by banks of lofty trees. They stood at the door of the house. It was a fairy palace. The walls were of burnished gold, and here and there shone diamonds of dazzling hue, which were stuck into the walls. They did not meet with any beings, human or other. They went inside, which was richly furnished. They went from room to room, but they did not see anyone. It seemed to be a deserted house. At last, however, they found in one room a young lady lying down, apparently in sleep, on a bed of golden framework. She was of exquisite beauty. Her complexion was a mixture of red and white, and her age was apparently about 16. The king's son and the minister's son gazed upon her with rapture, but they had not stood long when this young lady of superb beauty opened her eyes, which seemed like those of a gazelle. On seeing the strangers, she said, "How have you come here, ye unfortunate men? Begone, begone. This is the abode of a mighty serpent, which has devoured my father, my mother, my brothers, and all my relatives. I am the only one of my family that he has spared. Flee for your lives, or else the serpent will put you both in its capacious maw." The minister's son told the princess how the serpent had breathed its last, how he and his friend had got possession of its head jewel, and by its light had come to her palace. She thanked the strangers for delivering her from the infernal serpent, and begged of them to live in the house, and never to desert her. The king's son and the minister's son gladly accepted the invitation. The king's son, smitten with the charms of the peerless princess, married her after a short time, and as there was no priest there, the hymeneal knot was tied by a simple exchange of garlands of flowers.